Garfield!
What's up guys, Rob from LegitBrowniesGaming here, and today I am bringing you a Garfield guide for NASB2. Now, if you've seen my Garfield guide for NASB1, or my Reptar guide for that matter, this is going to be pretty similar in structure. There's going to be different sections breaking down the different parts of Garfield's game, so timestamps for the different sections will be in the description, as well as the comment section down below. Just some background before we get started. I, of course, played Garfield as my main in NASB1, so there is some general familiarity there, but he is very much a different character in NASB2. That being the case, and since obviously I am not the best player out there, I've been working with and consulting some of the better / top players of Garfield just to make sure that what I am bringing to the table is accurate and helpful. Also, when it comes to the charge attacks in NASB2, I will be referring to them as strongs, so if you hear me say something like snare, that would be, strong nair / fair, since those are the same thing in this game, or S-dare, which would be strong dare. It's just easier for me to refer to them as strong, since that's just been in my brain since NASB1. I want to especially thank Garfield Fan 6, aka Gaforf, for her help with this guide, as she provided many tips and clips, and was my go-to person for help with a lot of the stuff and fact-checking and stuff on this guide. Of course, everyone who provided tips and clips will be credited at the end, so stick around to the end of the guide for a mini montage showcasing both the practical stuff as well as some cool style things you can do with the Lasagna cat. Now for a basic intro, Garfield is a midweight in this game. Generally, he is a rushdown / combo based character who can get some really early kills due to the variety of routes he has with which to put his opponents in a bad situation. Featuring a powerful spike with his S-dare, an incredibly fast and surprisingly lethal up special, as well as a 2-frame move in Shine, Garfield isn't just a one-trick pony, and you will need to master many of these tools to effectively use the Lasagna cat. Garfield is a bit on the tougher side of the characters due to his general stubbiness on the ground and the precise technical inputs required to pull off some of his kit, but he will reward you very well if you are able to do so. Although he may fit into the spacey archetype, the Fat Cat brings a lot more to the table than just your typical tricks of the trade. So with all that being said, let's get into the basics of Garfield's moveset. So we're going to get into the basics of Garfield's moveset here. We're just hopping into the dojo here. And so we're going to go over, what his moves are and some basic uses for them, but we're not going to get too in-depth because, of course, a lot of that will be covered in other sections, like the combo routes and kill sections and stuff like that. So we will turn on the hitboxes just so we can get a better view of this stuff. So starting with his jab is actually a multi-hit jab, so you can do it once, which is pretty good for stuff like, jab reset, although jab reset's weird in this game, but you can do stuff like, jab grab and stuff like that with this, pretty good. But if you spam it, you get the multi-hit with the finisher. And the tray is actually a projectile at the end. If I'll show you here real quick. He kicks out the tray, and it actually does act as a projectile. So it's got a little bit of range at the end, nothing too crazy. It's a solid jab. It's relatively quick and a little bit of a projectile. His forward tilt is his kick. Not bad. A little bit of range on it. I will say in general, Garfield's kind of stubby on the ground, so you might find yourself a little frustrated at times with your general lack of range, but this can set up into some stuff every now and then. It's also just a good get off me kind of tool. If your opponent's too much up on you, just get out of here, just no. His down tilt will look familiar to you if you've played Falco. Tail swipe. This it looks like it has decent range, but I'm telling you, it feels way worse than it looks. To try to use this move sometimes. This move is decent for getting things like down tilt grab. If your opponent actually doesn't just do dumb things like the AI like that. So it's a decent poke. It's nothing too crazy, but yeah, I mean, there's not much range to it here. Even though it looks like it should be hitting, it's not. It's nothing too crazy. Rip. Up tilt is the same up tilt from NASB1. Pretty good. It can scoop, although again, it's one of these moves that it looks like it has more range than it does. It's hard to really demonstrate, but in matches you'll notice like you'll be like right next to your opponent, and it's like, please, I beg you, hit the move, Garf. But this is good for like juggling. You know, if your opponent is not DIing it properly. Stuff like that. It's not very useful on shield and stuff, so keep that in mind. But it is a decent follow-up off of something like a light down air, up tilt. You can usually do like light down air, up tilt, grab. But you can be grabbed out of that. It's not safe on shield, so keep that in mind. So we have up tilt, down tilt, dash attack. His dash attack is pretty good. It's got a lot of end lag on it though. So if you hit it, you want to try to hit it towards the end of it. Whoops. Hello, Garfield. There we go. You want to try to hit it like towards the end if you can, so you can follow up on it. But it does pop you up in a pretty decent angle to follow up with something like an aerial on. Obviously not very safe on shield, so don't be spamming this on shield. But it is relatively quick, and it can catch your opponent off guard if they're not really paying attention at times. Okay, so that's it for the lights on the ground. So his charged neutral strong is his, you know, big old, you know, turkey leg, chicken leg, whatever it is. I think it's a chicken leg. This does have pretty good range on it. It's one of his more ranged attacks on the ground. It doesn't hit as far as you might think, as far as like the range, but it's much stronger in this game than it was in 1, it feels like. So this is a really good move for, you know, finishing off like a high damage opponent, or, you know, if they don't have a great ledge get up attack, you can just kind of, you know, charge this at ledge and cover some options and stuff. His up on the ground is his yawn. It's not bad. It's got decent range. It's actually a pretty good anti-air along with his up tilt. And it is pretty strong. And this move actually becomes really important later on for some combos that we're going to talk about. But this is not like a neutral strong move that you can kind of just throw out. You will more often than not eat a punish if you miss this. You don't want to just be throwing out neutral strong either, but because this doesn't really have like shield pushback as much, you will most likely eat a punish if you miss this. And if you played NASB1, you will be familiar with his charge down attack. It's not as ridiculous as it was in NASB1. In fact, the hitbox is rather modest for the most part, but it is very strong and is very useful for killing, especially at ledge. It sends at a pretty brutal angle at ledge, so you can also cover some recoveries by using this off ledge. Okay, so those are his charge attacks on the ground. So we're going to go over his aerials now. So we'll start with the Nair. If you're played NASB1 again, this will be familiar to you. This is a pretty good move because it covers a lot of his body and it lingers pretty long. So this is a really good move for like a fast fall opportunity. You go in, fast fall Nair. Yeah. Covers a lot, stays out for a very long time. Pretty useful move all around. His back air is actually one of his best moves in his kit. He dabs on his haters with his back air. And throws his big old foot out there. And this move, again, lingers pretty long and is pretty far range. Also sets up into a lot of his kit. So, you know, it's good for edge guarding. It's good for an out of shield option. Lots of different stuff that you can do with that move. So, pretty good. His light up air will be familiar to you if you played NASB1, although it's not quite as disjointed this time around, and the hitbox is even further offset than the actual animation, which I don't know why, because that was one of my big complaints with NASB1 was that the hitbox didn't match the animation, and I actually kind of hate moves whose hitboxes don't match their animation, and this is certainly one of them. It's decently disjointed at first, though, so it's a pretty good move for juggling. You know, if you got your opponent above you, you can do some nice juggles with this. You can also fast fall it into some stuff. So, yeah, pretty good move all around, especially for like up air juggles. And his light fair. Got Pugx. Unfortunately, Pugx is not a projectile in this game, but he is his light fair, and his light fair is really good. Not necessarily on its own. Like, on its own, it's just kind of okay. But some of the stuff it combos into, like, you can do offstage light fair into S-Dare, which is absolutely devious. Not like that. That wasn't a true combo, but you can do, like, light fair into S-Dare if you're good enough, which I am not. But I do have some clips of that, which I will show, of course, throughout the guide. So, yeah, on its own, it's not a great move because it's not super like disjointed or anything. But yeah, and of course, his light dare is the multi-hit move, which was an absolute demon in NASB1, and it functions a lot of the similar way as in NASB1. It has an ending hitbox that if you hit can send your opponent upwards, but for the most part you're going to want to be fast falling this into doing other things like light dare, shine. Pretty good move for racking up damage though, and it does combo into a lot of stuff. So it's not safe on shield like in NASB1, but it does generally do a pretty good job at approaching and leading into some of his other stuff. So his charged move in the air, or his snare, is a bite, which the hitbox on it is actually pretty good. This is like kind of the opposite of some of his grounded moves, where the hitbox on it looks pretty bad, but it's actually pretty good, especially off of something like a, you know, like I just showed, a grab up throw snare you can generally do on most of the cast. It's pretty strong too. It's a really good kill option, like a raw kill option. His charged up air, or his strong up air, a little bit frustrating to use sometimes because it's a multi-hit, and if you don't get the finisher, your opponent can fall out of it a lot of the times. In fact, you will find that your opponent falls out of this a lot, actually. But if you hit the finisher, it is pretty good. And it's very useful in some other combos that we will discuss later. But be warned that it is a little inconsistent, and your opponents tend to fall out of it a lot, especially if you like fast fall it. But yeah, and his strong dare looks visually similar, except for the, you know, kind of pink cloud around him, to his light dare, but it is a spike. So it is a la Falco-esque spike, like that. So it does have a sour spot. If you don't hit it properly, it does just send your opponent, you know, kind of like upward a little bit, like that. Late hit sour spot, so keep that in mind. It can also be a little bit difficult to execute this move without fast falling, so this is a move that is gonna take a little bit of getting used to, especially if you're like me and you came from a game like NASB1 where fast falling was a button as opposed to a analog input. There you go. But yeah, so keep that in mind. It is very easy to kill yourself with this, a la Falco. Right, so there's that. So those are his aerials. His aerials are generally, I would say, better than his grounded moves for the most part. His grounded moves are a little frustrating at times due to just how stubby they are, while his aerials actually have a fair bit of range to them for the most part. So we'll go over his throws. Up throw is generally like your best throw because it combos into snare. I don't really think he really has any kill throws for the most part. You know, back throw is useful for getting your opponent off stage. Down throw sends out a weird angle, so it can catch people off guard sometimes, but I'm not gonna lie, you're generally better off just going for up throw, because up throw combo is way easier. But his throws really aren't anything special. They're just kind of your general bog standard set of throws, honestly. But his specials are where things get really interesting. So of course you have Shine. You know, it's frame 2. So 1, 2, you know, automatically just pull out a hitbox on frame 2. Kind of nuts. Whoops, sorry about that, guys. Hold on, I need to pull up some notes. So yeah, frame is Shine is frame 2, and it's jump cancelable on frame 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're already in jump squat frame 4. So he also has a 4-frame jump squat, so keep that in mind. That is your window to cancel Shine into other stuff like wave shining. You can wave dash. You can also shine grab. Stuff like that. We'll get more into that, like I said, later in the guide. But yeah, Shine, very good move. You can try to, you know, shine spike people if you're better than me. It doesn't sound like as brutal of an angle as like Fox's does in melee, but it's there. His forward special is his pies, and he throws out 3 pies in a set order. The first pie, I believe it's a set order. Let me, yeah, well, I know it's a set order. I just want to make sure the order is right, so reset my order here. Yeah, so first pie just kind of stuns him. Second pie pops him up a little bit. Third pie brings him towards you. Generally, it's a decent tool at like a disrupt. So if your opponent is attacking you with like some really big moves, you can kind of just throw this out and disrupt them a little bit. It's also useful for edge guarding, you know, if you want to just control space. They're not as good as they were in NASB1, unfortunately, but they are still useful. His down special is Sugar Rush. You see this food meter at the bottom. The more moves you do that entail food, so like, you know, donut or his chicken leg, your food meter builds up. When you use Sugar Rush, you fall faster and you run faster. And when I say you fall faster, you fall like an absolute sack of bricks in this mode. Like, this is his normal fall speed. Yeah, you're just gone. Your up special does go higher with this mode, but I'm not gonna lie to you, most of the time this mode is not very useful in a lot of different ways. You're often better off not even using it, except for some niche circumstances. Although it is worth noting that Garfield gets heavier and slower the more that meter is built up, so you might be noticing you might miss some follow-ups. Although honestly, in my playing, I haven't really noticed anything too crazy. And up special is perhaps the most interesting move out of the bunch from Garfield. As far as recovery goes, it's okay. It can be a bit difficult sometimes to like snap ledge with it, which you want to, because if you land with this, a lot of the times you're going to eat a punish off of it. But the most interesting use about his up special, or one of the most interesting uses, this move is actually integral to like a lot of his kit, is that you can jump cancel it after a certain amount of time. So as long as you have a jump, you can jump out of it, which is hella useful for some stuff later on that we're going to talk about. And I'll go more in depth into this on his disadvantage and recovery section, but yeah, jump cancelable, very helpful. Just quickly go over his slime versions of these moves. Slime Shine sends upward like Falco. Useful for some niche stuff, although generally not the best use of your meter. Slime Pie sends out kind of like in NASB1, you know, essentially the cream pie, where it's a multi-hit. Unfortunately, it's really not very good, and is almost never worth really using. If you do slime down special, it would fill the meter about half of its value before he would use it. So if you had 0 meter, you see how it fills up to halfway? Yeah, And Slime Up Special just goes further and is a little bit faster. It's useful situationally for recovering, but most of the time with Garf, you're going to want to be saving his meter for his combos or burst. Those are usually the two things that a lot of his meter gets used for. He doesn't really use his slime specials all that much, except maybe situationally. But we will get more in depth on that later. But yeah, that's just a basic overview of Garf's moves. Oh, I guess I can show you his ledge attack. It's nothing crazy. And I'll actually go into... Let me go into a match real quick and I will show you his get-up attack very, very quickly. It's nothing crazy, but it's actually barely useful sometimes, like especially if you catch your opponents like off guard. You can catch people off guard with it every now and then. So let me just do something that's gonna put me in tumble. So yeah, his get up attack's nothing crazy. Whoops, I accidentally killed player 2. But if he hits it, it actually sends decently far, so it is a really good wake up attack. Like, it's a very good get off me kind of move, because it sends relatively far. So yeah, so that's just a basic intro to Garfield's moves and his kit, and more of this will be explained in the following sections related to the uses for a lot of this stuff. Okay, so in this section we're going to be talking about neutral, and Garfield's neutral in NASB2 is a little bit tricky due to his like kind of general stubbiness on the ground. It can be a bit hard to find an opening to get in, especially against certain archetype characters like big disjoint characters like Donatello, or characters with fast movement options like Korra. However, we do have pretty good options with our use of aerials as well as shine. So let's go ahead and talk about specifics. So the first thing we're going to talk about is pies in neutral now. Pies in neutral are not as good as they were in NASB1, but they still serve a pretty good function in this game, and that is to control space and condition our opponents. So, you know, you can use pies as a way to condition your opponents to doing things what you want them to do. And what I mean by that is if you're throwing out pies in neutral, you know, you can throw one high, and then, you know, approach on the ground, you can throw one low, and then you're forcing your opponent into a reaction of some kind, and based on what their reaction is, you can then get a follow-up off of that. If you notice that your opponent is always shielding your pies, you can take note of that and try to approach with something like an aerial. If you notice that your opponent is not very good at avoiding them and just getting hit, you know, you might take that as an opening to use them a little bit more for chip damage and stuff like that. And if your opponent is jumping over your pies constantly, you know, you could throw one out, and then if they're jumping, you know, space an aerial in their path to kind of, you know, get a hit and get an opening. Pies may not be the great combo starter that they were in NASB1, but they're still very, very useful for conditioning your opponent. So I would say make good use of pies in neutral. These can also be useful if you want to slow neutral down a little bit. Say your opponent's kind of getting a little bit aggressive and you want to kind of reset things. You can also use them as a tool for that. So yeah, definitely make good use of your pies in neutral. Don't spam them because they're not the best option in terms of, like, you know, a spammable move in neutral. And plus, if you're spamming them too often, then your opponent is going to start reading that and they're going to start punishing you for it. So don't throw them out like, you know, spamming, but definitely make good use of them in neutral to control space and condition your opponent into doing something that you want them to do. So if your opponent is constantly shielding your pies, we can make use of that in a couple different ways. One of them is with Light Dare. So Light Dare fast falling is one of Garf's better neutral tools in this game because it's a pretty solid approach. You definitely want to make sure you're fast falling to Light Dare, because if you're hitting that last hitbox like that, you're going to send your opponent up, which you can still follow up with like a fair or a nair or something like that. But fast fall Light Dare is generally pretty good because it keeps your opponent grounded, which means you can follow up with one of our best moves in Shine. But before we get to that, we'll talk about some other flops you can do off of Light Dare. You know, you fast fall Light Dare, you can get up tilts, or you can do Light Dare into up strong. Keep in mind that these are not true. Your opponent can usually beat you out with a grab off of these two moves, especially if they parry your Light Dare. But they are pretty useful tools if you notice that your opponent is you know, getting hit by your Light Dares a lot. You can usually get a couple of these follow-ups before your opponent starts catching on. And especially with up tilts on some of the lighter characters, you can get a couple juggles in. And if they're at higher percent, you know, you can set them up for like a light up tilt to like a up air or something like that. You know, you see how high you go when you get hit with it. Follow up a light up air, and you know, do your juggles from there. So it's pretty good. And the Light Dare to up strong actually combos into some other stuff that we're going to talk about later with some of his kill routes. That one, of course, is a little bit more risky because it's a slower move, so your opponent can, you know, shield it or beat you out with a fast out of shield option or a grab. But if you are managing to get it to hit, it's pretty good, and it's a pretty good kill option for us. One of the better things you can also do with Light Dare is you can use Light Dare into a Shine. So I will show you in slow motion kind of the mechanics of this. One thing I also forgot to mention, if you're approaching with Light Dare, you want to try to land on top of as much as your opponent as possible, like kind of almost like right on top of them. Because following up with Shine, you want to hit Shine as close to your opponent as possible in order to make the follow-ups easier. Because Shine sends sometimes like at angles that are, or distances that might be too far for certain follow-ups. So you just want to make it easy on yourself and try to hit as close as possible. So you're going to do a fast fall Light Dare and then a Shine. So I kind of show you like breaking down this option here. So fast fall Light Dare, Shine, and as your opponent's getting hit, you're going to input, you know, your wave dash out of Shine, you know, whatever direction your opponent got hit in, and choose a follow-up off of that. And then once you have your follow-up off of that, congratulations, you have one neutral. So fast fall, fast fall Light Dare, Shine, and then follow-up. You can do like a wave Shine grab. You can do like a wave Shine up tilt, something like that, or a wave Shine forward tilt. And you might need to run forward a little bit sometimes, depending on how far your opponents are getting sent away. You know, depending on like their DI and stuff like that. So you of course can also do like wave shining, which we will discuss later. So you know, keep that in mind. And by the way, if you're getting that jump, that means you're not inputting your wave dash fast enough. And if you're jumping after Shine all the way, it means you're not inputting during jump squat, which is only a couple frames, 4 frames, I believe. So it does take some getting used to. Obviously, as you can see, I'm still not perfect at it either. So keep that in mind. But we're going to get into more wave shine stuff later. This is just about winning neutral. So yeah. If your opponent is shielding your Light Dare, you can still execute a Light Dare Shine, and you can simply do a Shine Grab, which, again, if you're familiar with Melee, is going to work the same way. Now, I wish I could show you frame by frame, but unfortunately, because of the limitations of the dojo here, I can't make Garf the CPU shield, unfortunately. And I also can't show you a frame by frame breakdown of a Shine Grab because the grab button is a next frame option for some reason, even if you change what your grab button is. But it works the same. You're going to do a Shine, you're going to jump cancel Shine, and while you're in jump squat, you're going to input a grab. So something like, it's going to look like this. And you're going to notice it's a lot faster than simply letting Shine end and then trying to grab. Letting Shine end and then trying to grab is incredibly slow, as you can see. So you're going to want to be doing your shine grabs. So if your opponent was shielding, you would hit light dare, shine on their shield, and then you could just do a shine grab right after. And then, again, you have also one neutral. So shine is very, very good for Garfield's neutral because you can do it off of a lot of different things and get some pretty cool follow-ups with it, which we will explain in the combo section. You can also try approaching with running shine. I will say, due to this game's momentum, it can be a bit of a nuisance at times trying to like figure out exactly when to tap the special button, because if you're still holding forward, obviously you're going to throw out a pie. So it's not impossible, it's just a little bit more difficult, but it is something that you're going to want to kind of get used to doing. You know, just implementing shine as much as you can into your game, especially for neutral. So you can also approach with bear. Bear is a pretty good approach tool because it is fairly safe on shield if you space it out correctly, and it's not terribly hard to space out, I don't think. So, you know, if we let Garfield jump here and we input his bear, you can see it's covered by a hitbox. Your hurtbox is covered by a hitbox, and it's actually pretty disjointed from your actual hurtbox, even towards like the latter stage of the move, except for like when there's no more hitbox. So it's a pretty good approach tool, especially if your opponent's like shielding a lot of neutral. You know, you could run in and space a bear, because chances are, even if they shield it, you can still like, you know, jump out of it or drift back with it. You know, it's a relatively safe move, and it's one of Garf's best moves. So it's also, funnily enough, like a pretty good anti-air. You know, if your opponent's jumping in a lot and using a lot of aerials, it's a pretty good anti-air because it beats out a lot of things. So pretty solid neutral tool for Garf. It's good on shield. It's not safe on shield necessarily. If you do miss-space it, your opponent can punish you. But once you learn the spacing, it's good on shield. It's good for anti-airs. It's good for controlling space. It's a pretty solid neutral tool all around. You know, it's a very difficult move to punish if done right. So, you know, and if you hit, you can, of course, just fast fall it to do like a follow-up like that. So, make good use of his bear. Kind of the same with his nair. His nair's a decent anti-air. It's not as good as his bear, though, so I would make more use of bear in neutral if you can. So definitely keep that in mind. So another tactic you can use in neutral is bait and switch. So if you notice that your opponent is consistently beating out your approach tools, don't be afraid to slow the game down and try some other tactics. You know, since Garf can have a hard time with characters that have speed or disjoints, you might want to implement some conditioning and, you know, come mind game type stuff. You know, make more use of pies, space out some more aerials. Baiting a bad approach is really, really good for Garfield, especially because we have decent tools to punish bad approaches. Like we have up tilt is a pretty solid anti-air, back air is a pretty solid anti-air. You can even, you know, punish some bad approach if they're landing in front of you with something that's relatively fast and quick, like up tilt, or down tilt, which leads into some other stuff if you, jeez, my English. Which leads into some other stuff if you are hitting it properly. Garfield definitely can bait and switch his opponents pretty hard in this game. You know, you don't have to camp your opponents out. I think Garfield best played when he's a mix of aggression and kind of mind games, because his neutral isn't exactly the best thing in this game. It's not the worst. It's definitely very tricky. So you want to kind of implement both. You want to kind of implement some aggressive approaches with light dare and shine, with some more conditioning stuff like pies, aerials, and back air and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely don't be afraid to slow the game down. Like I said, you don't have to camp your opponents out. In fact, I wouldn't really even recommend it because Garfield is not as good at camping in this game as some other characters, and he's certainly not as good at being kind of a campy Wally character as he was in NASB1. You can't really make great use of stuff like wave shines, if you're consistently on the other side of the stage from your opponent, right? So, but don't be afraid to slow the game down. And of course, you can implement some other things, you know, when I talk about mind games, like some tomahawk grabs, which if you're not familiar with that term, tomahawk grab is an empty hop into a grab. Which is something that obviously every character can do, but it's even scarier for Garfield when you're playing against him, because if he's approaching from the air, it's pretty tricky for your opponent to deal with, because you might be spacing a backer on shield, or you might be approaching with a light dare trying to go for a light dare confirm of some kind, like into a shine. So, you know, tomahawk grabs are definitely something we make pretty good use of, because our aerials are so scary. Your opponent might get conditioned to shielding while you're in the air, so definitely keep that in mind. So overall, Garf's neutral is better than bad, but it definitely is a trickier part of his game. It's key to mix up and vary your approaches while conditioning your opponents with pies and other spaced aerials to get the results you want. If your opponent is consistently beating out one approach tool, you can mix it up and go for another. You know, definitely keep your opponent on your toes with Garfield, because any one of our openings can lead to a kill, so we only need that one opening. So we need to make sure that we're mixing things up so we're getting those openings. You know, definitely speed the game up or slow the game down depending on the circumstances. Garf is very flexible and neutral, but he can be frustrating at times. I am not going to lie, the stubbiness of some of his moves on the ground is going to be very frustrating to deal with at times. So just don't get frustrated. You know, keep mixing it up and be ready to be explosive when you do get the win in neutral with some of the combos that we're going to cover in this next segment. Okay, so we're going to talk about throws and grabs with Garfield. And of course, you know, we have a bunch of different ways to get into a grab, like our shine grab that we can do. You know, shine, jump, grab. You can sometimes even do like a wave shine grab. You can do a down tilt grab. A couple different ways we can get into a grab, but one of Garf's best options off of a grab is simply up throw snare. As you can see, just a 2-input combo nets you 24%. And it's pretty consistent across the cast. This is the most consistent throw I've found, is up throw into some other stuff. You can also do like up throw into up air, and if your opponent messes up, you can sometimes follow it up with an up tilt. Or if they're at high enough percent, you can, you know, juggle them with up airs, which is not bad. You can also do like up throw, nair, and if they mess up their landing, you can get like a dash attack. But you know, you can experiment with your up throw. For the most part, I will say up throw snare is fairly consistent and nets you a decent amount of damage, and can also kill at high enough percents against certain characters. So do keep that in mind. So another option you have for a grab is up throw S-Dare, and this is actually a pretty useful combo for Garfield, because S-Dare at low percent does not send your opponent into tumble, so they actually can't tech the S-Dare on stage. So that means you can usually get about 2 to 3 up throw S-Dare loops on most of the cast at 0 before the percentage gets too high and starts sending them to tumble. And of course, once they're sent into tumble, they can start to tech this option. But yeah, up throw S-Dare is pretty good, and it's also useful for other follow-ups. If you want to mix in like an up throw S-Dare shine into a wave shine or whatever you want to do, you can do that. But keep this in the back pocket at low percent, because like I said, your opponent can't actually tech this until the percent gets too high. I think those are generally the two best options for Garfield: up throw snare and up throw S-Dare to lead into other stuff. You know, you can even get fancy with it. If you land close enough, you can even follow that up with like a shine, you know, wave shine type stuff. So yeah, you can, you know, do your up throw into your up throw or your up air chains if you want to juggle a bit, which also is not bad. Yeah, his other throws are kind of just okay. You know, back throw is good for getting your opponent off stage. Down throw sends a weird angle, and it can be followed up on. It's just a little bit more difficult, I found, than simply just going for up throw. And forward throw doesn't send you like anywhere at all. It kind of sucks. Like even at really high percent, it kind of just doesn't send you anywhere. Yeah, 100%, and it barely sends him like across the stage. So, yeah, we're gonna keep it short. We're gonna keep it simple because Garfield's grabs and throws are pretty simple. Once you get that grab off of something like a shine grab, you're just gonna generally want to go for like up throw snare, up throw up air, up throw S air, something along those lines. So yeah, that's pretty much it for his grabs. Let's go into his bread and butter percent building combos. Okay, so in this section we're going to go over Garfield's bread and butter percent building combos. Now, something to keep in mind is that a lot of Garf's combos can actually be used both as percent builders and kill options, just depending on, the percentage that your opponent is at. I tried to split them into the category I think they're most useful as, though. So if a combo can be used as both a kill option and a percent builder, I tried to decide, what situation arises more often with that combo, and I put it into that category. Although if it can be used as a kill option, I will make a note of that in the kills section. I just won't go like in depth with it again. So do keep that in mind. A lot of Garf stuff is pretty flexible as far as situations go. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll just run through again very quickly the grab stuff. You already know you can do down tilt grab into up throw snare. Something like that will net you decent percentage. You can do, up throw S-Dare chains as we discussed already. So not going to go too far into that. A simple up throw aerial and a juggle. We've gone over that all already. We've already gone over also your light dare stuff a little bit in the neutral section. We're going to go into that just a bit more here. So let's start with the move. The move that you've probably seen in Twitter clips plenty of times already, shine. And yes, you can wave shine in this game. Yes, wave shining, of course, is something that you can fairly easily do in this game. It's pretty simple in theory, pretty difficult in execution. So of course, you run up, you hit your shine, you input a wave dash in the direction your opponent is hit, and then you follow it up with another shine. So you have to know that sometimes your opponent does get sent like a little bit further out. As you can see on no DI, Garfield is getting sent further out, so you may need to follow this up with like a dash forward to hit another shine. So you do something like a wave shine into a grab. Just keep in mind that if your opponent is getting sent too far away, you may need to run forward a little bit. You could do a shine into a forward tilt with proper spacing. Shine is pretty useful. And of course, if your opponent is DIing in, or if you're good enough with spacing, you can hit some, multi-wave shines type stuff, which can lead into any of the sort of stuff that we've talked about already. So yeah, you could do like shine, wave dash, or wave shine grab, wave shine F tilt, wave shine down tilt. Yeah, basically the combo is wave shine into freestyle. Yeah, it's pretty good. It is pretty good. And of course, you can also hit this off of light dares. So you do light dare, shine, grab, up throw snare, something like that. These pretty decent percent, 30% already. And the thing is about with Garf is we don't really have to get our opponent to too high of a percent to even be at kill percent, since we have a lot of ways to scam people in this game. Putting it quite frankly, you have a lot of ways to really scam people, so something like that is going to be generally a pretty solid option for yourself as well. You can also try, if your opponent is up in the air, you can try doing like a drag down with the light dare. It's a little bit difficult to pull off. Hold on, let me get Garfield away from the ledge here, because the AI likes to do funny things near the ledge. So you can do something like that. You know, drag down into a grab into an up throw. You can also generally get a couple of up tilts off on your opponent. So you can do like a light dare, up tilt, grab. Something like that. You know, again, keep in mind the up tilts aren't true. But if you do manage to hit the first up tilt, you can generally hit the second one. Especially at low percents before they start getting knocked too far away. So, you know, up tilt, grab, up throw. And then you don't miss a snare like me. You know. Of course, keep that in mind. So, up tilt. But see, if your opponent does get knocked too far away off the first up tilt, or if they DI away, you know, you can just follow this up with like a dash grab or something like that. If you also hit dash attack towards the end of it, you can sometimes follow it up with a move, so something like that. You want to make sure you're hitting it towards the end, because if you hit it too early, it's going to be really difficult to follow up because you're going to be stuck in end lag. So if you hit it more towards the end, you know, you can do something like this, where you just kind of freestyle on your opponent after that. That's like the general rule of just with Garf's percent building, is just kind of be reactionary to the most for the most part. You know, outside of some set things like the up throw S-Dare loops and some of your shine stuff, a lot of it is, and even your shine stuff is, you know, reacting, right? Reacting and reading the situation. So yeah, even though this section might be shorter, you might be thinking, well, Garf doesn't really have a lot of bread and butter combos. It's not really that. It's that most of it is just going to be you reading and reacting to your opponent. So keep the set piece that we have in mind. Keep your combo routes in mind. But most of the time, what you're going to want to do is just make sure that you are paying attention to what your opponent is doing, reading their DI, and reacting accordingly, because Garf has really good reaction tools. You know, if your opponent's DIing too far away on some of your moves, you can go in with something like a back air, or if they're trying to hold their ground more, you know, you can go in for like a wave shine into like a shine grab on shield or something along those lines. You know, just be ready to react, but don't think you're going to go into every game like, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and this is how it's going to play out. You got to be ready to react, because that's just kind of how Garf goes. This next section is going to be a little bit more like rigid, because he does have a couple of pretty decent set confirm kills, kill confirm. So let's go ahead and jump into those now. Okay, so in this section, we're going to be talking about Garfield's kill confirms. And you may have noticed that in the bread and butter percent building, we didn't use any slime at all. And I think that's because slime is much better served with Garf's kill confirms, especially for some of the up B stuff that I'm going to show you towards the end of this section. But to start out, we're going to keep it pretty simple. One of the Garf's simplest and yet most effective ways to kill is with wave shine into down strong. The thing that you got to keep in mind with down strong is that it is not very rangy, as you can see, and the inner hitbox is actually a sour spot, so you gotta make sure that you're hitting that outer hitbox in order to really get a lot of power out of it. But the inputs are quite simple: shine, wave dash, down strong. You saw it in the clip earlier in the bread and butter percent builder from CakeAssault. Shine, wave dash, down strong, and you can see that down strong hits like a freight train. So you hit your opponents at ledge with this at decent percent, they're probably going to die. It's just a very, very powerful combo. It's quick, so not a lot of people really can get out of it most of the time, even if they DI away on the shine. If you space it properly, it's just an overall very, very effective combo. So definitely wave shine, down strong, one to keep in mind. We went over this in the throw section, so I'm not going to go too in depth with it. But up throw snare at certain percents can also be a kill option on characters. Just got to make sure that you're reading the DI, and also the fact that up throw at high percents is going to send farther. Got to make sure that we're reading that and getting our proper spacing off of that as well. And one other one that is very, very good. It is weight and percent dependent, but you can do fair into S-Dare, which I will show you a clip here from our friend Garf doing this one. It's pretty good. it's pretty nuts fair into S there, so definitely one to keep in mind. And again, none of these even require any slime. These are all just things you can just simply do with the Garf. So we're gonna get into some shenanigans, shall we say, with our Lasagna cat here. And we're gonna start simple. One of my favorite ways to get kills is with light dare into up strong. And now the thing to keep in mind about this is that this can be shielded, it can be grabbed out of if your opponent is reacting quick enough to their the end of hit stun on the light dare, and you're going to want to fast forward the light dare so that way you can instantly go into your down strong, or your up strong. You want to space it so that you're pretty much landing directly on top of your opponent, and as soon as you start hitting that light dare, you'll want to just spam that up strong. This is more of a high % kill option because it's not going to scam your opponent out of a stock early, but if your opponent's getting to that point where your straight hits aren't quite killing them and you need a combo, this is one to keep in the back pocket for sure. But we can get even crazier with this, and we can get really, really dumb. Like kill your opponent at 40% dumb. And these next couple of tools are going to rely on your up B slime cancel. So what that means is you're going to want to make sure for all of these that when you're slime canceling your up B, it's on hit. You don't want to slime cancel like so you can jump out of it or anything like that. It's on hit. So I'll try to show you an example of that here. Up tilt slime cancel like that. And then you're going to go into whatever the combo route dictates from there on. So that's what I mean by up B slime cancel, on hit. That way you can go into whatever you need to do. So let's start talking about up B slime cancel because good lord, this is busted. We'll start with the more practical applications of it, and then we'll get into the kill your opponent at 40% because jank at the very end. So one of the simple things you can do with up B slime canceling is up tilt, up B slime cancel S dare at ledge. And this is pretty consistent because up tilt doesn't have a ton of knockback scaling. So it's fairly consistent to do this. And as you can see, it's really not all that hard to really do. And this can kill your opponent quite early because S dare is a pretty brutal move to get hit by at ledge. And there is a little bit of timing. It's a bit hard to explain because I'm not particularly sure of the timing aspect myself. It's got a little bit of timing because you can miss it if you're like too quick on a draw or too slow on a draw. And you also make sure that you don't want to like drift away or anything with your S dare. It gets pretty tricky, but go into Dojo and just practice and you'll see that it is fairly consistent. Just up tilt, up B, slime cancel dare, S dare. And you can even buffer the S dare while you're in the up B slime cancel. That way you don't accidentally fast fall it. You can even do this into a snare if you want. Up tilt, up B cancel, snare is also an option. You can also sometimes do up B strong up air if your opponent is like above you after your slime cancel. But off of up tilt, I found that S dare is generally the best option. So those are three things you can do off of an up tilt, up B slime cancel. You can also do a light dare up strong, up B slime cancel into something like a strong up air or a snare. Generally, this one you're not going to want to go for S dare too often because a lot of the times after an up strong you're going to be higher up in the air, and so you're not going to want to go for like an S dare because your opponent might just simply live it. But yeah, this one also takes a little bit of timing and spacing, as you can see there, because sometimes your opponent gets sent too far away, and so you have to time and space your up B. But as you've been seeing in the clips I've been showing, it's pretty potent to be able to hit this confirm on your opponents at times. You can also go for something like an up throw, up B slime cancel sup air. The thing that you want to keep in mind with that is that you're generally going to have to conserve a jump for this, and you're going to want to jump after the slime cancel of your up B. Otherwise, you might just straight up miss your opponent. So I'll put a clip of that in here as well. Just another one of these kill confirms that you can throw in there with some fun up B slime cancel shenanigans. His recovery, aka his up special in this game is pretty nuts. Yeah. And if you want to get really fancy, I'll show you in this clip here. You can go crazy nutso style with this and do light down air, up strong, slime cancel, up strong, up B, slime cancel into either strong up air or snare. Yeah. You can kill your opponent at 40 if you do it right. It's it's a little bit busted. Up B slime canceling with Garf is pretty broken. I'm not gonna lie to you. But the nice thing about it is that it does actually take some getting used to and some timing and skill. So just keep that in mind. I would recommend going into the dojo and just practicing the timing on a lot of this stuff, and just start trying to do this stuff in games without worrying about SDing, because you're gonna SD when you're trying this stuff and you're just learning. I do it all the time. So don't be afraid to just go into a game and just YOLO it out. You know, just go for a up strong, up B slime cancel move. And if you SD and you lose, you just gotta learn it. Once you start getting this down, though, good God, good God, it is pretty brutal for your opponents to deal with. So yeah, up B slime cancel, a lot of fun. So it's just something you're gonna have to keep in mind. You know, you're gonna want to make sure that you're watching your slime meter. And if you have 3 bars of slime as Garfield, go for one of these up B slime cancel things. Just because. You know what? Just because. Because if you have 3 bars of slime and you're not using them, you're kind of just wasting the slime that you would be building otherwise. So yeah, Garfield's kill confirms are a lot of fun, but they do take a little bit of practice. So go into the dojo and make sure you're getting yourself comfortable with some of the timing on this stuff. Okay, so in this part of the video, we're going to be talking about edge guarding and ledge trapping. And edge guarding and ledge trapping is something that Garf is quite good at in this game. So it's important for us to kind of get this down so that we can secure the kills that we need to get before your opponent starts getting into some of the higher percents where Garf has a teeny tiny bit of arthritis sometimes when it comes to his raw kill power not being the greatest outside of a couple moves. So we want to make sure we're securing our kills when we have the opportunity to do so. So before we get into specifics, I want to give a general philosophy when it comes to edge guarding with Garfield, and that is to always be controlling space with the different moves that we have that do that. Because we are so scary in an edge guard situation, specifically because of moves like S-Dare, which can pretty much send your opponent into an unrecoverable position, we want to be threatening all the time. And one of the best ways that we can be threatening all the time is with our pies. We can control the space that our opponent is recovering in simply by using this projectile. Say you have an opponent that is always recovering high. You can jump, throw a pie, and use that to control that space to force them to play around it. They can either take a hit, and if they take a hit, they're going to drop lower, which means that they're going to be in an even better position for us to edge guard, or they can go around it, which means that we're going to be able to read that and hit them with something like a strong up air, or, you know, perhaps a up B slime cancel move, or combo, something to that matter. And yeah, you're just going to want to use pies to condition your opponent, control space, and make them go where you want them to go. They're a very good, useful tool in edge guard situations, even if they don't hit most of the time, simply for putting that thought in your opponent's head to put them in a better position for you to take advantage of. You can do something similar with something like your back air and your nair, just good controlling moves that make it so that there are certain parts of the air that your opponent simply can't recover to if they want to go high. And if your opponent wants to go low, well, we have a couple tools to deal with that in S-Dare and down strong. So let's talk about those specifically, and then we'll talk about ledge trapping, you know, what to do if your opponent does make it back to the ledge. So one thing to keep in mind with S-Dare is that it is unfortunately quite easy to just do this and simply SD. S-Dare is out for quite a while, and it's not exactly something that you can recover from a lot of the times if you're, you know, lacking resources. Because look at how long this move lasts, and look at how long the end lag is. It's a bit much, so definitely something you want to keep in mind. One thing that you can do to kind of mitigate the risk, because if you try to do S-Dare off ledge, you will just do that, is just to do a short hop. Just do short hop, S-Dare, and then you can recover from there. You know, of course, if you do have slime also, you can do a, slime dash, whatever you want to call it. So, if you want to do short hop S-Dare to cover that ledge option, just keep in mind that you can't buffer it really all that well off of ledge, so you're going to have to do, jump, S-Dare, and then you're going to be below the stage, so keep that in mind. It is a little bit risky to do, but, if you can hit it, it's, for the most part, going to send your opponent into some pretty unfortunate situations for them. So, S-Dare, very good tool for covering low recoveries. Speaking of low recoveries, we can also cover low recoveries with our down strong, if Garfield wants to cooperate with me for a sec. You can see that we are able to stand here and hit off stage with the hitbox. Now, this will not work super well if your opponent is very good at snapping ledge, but if your opponent has a bit of a tricky recovery that is difficult to snap ledge with, this is a very good tool with which to kind of just cover this space, because you're kind of negating the space around ledge for a little bit that your opponent can take, and you're forcing them to maybe go a little bit wider than they might want to. And honestly, a lot of the times people might just drift away too far and not grab ledge because they're afraid of this move. So down strong at ledge, very good move to cover low recoveries as well. In an edge guard situation, you can also go for something like an offstage bear, convert that into a down air, and kind of freestyle from there. I'll show you a clip here from Garf showing how you can extend your edge guards with light dare into S dare. Controlling that space, putting your opponent in a bad situation, leading into a simple slime cancel conversion into a stock is very, very helpful. So what do you do if your opponent actually does get to ledge? Well, I think one of the better options that we currently have at our disposal, because we are lacking a Pugx-like projectile, is by simply, Garf wants to move a little bit for me here, simply using our neutral strong at ledge is something that we can cover a lot with, although it's not perfect. So, I'm going to turn this off just for now so we can see, but you can see that if we space it properly, we can cover a lot of the ledge with the hitbox of this move. What I will say is you have to keep in mind that this doesn't fully cover roll, and it doesn't fully cover certain get-up attacks. If you see where Garfield is right now, he's kind of, 3 boxes. If you look at the edge of the edge of the ledge there, and on a roll he's about 4.5 boxes in, so it doesn't perfectly cover roll, because here you can cover it pretty well, but I believe your opponent would still be able to get up and out of danger with something like a simple ledge get up. It would probably still have enough intangibility to escape that. So it is a really good move, though, don't get me wrong, especially if you want to play some mind games with your opponent and try charging it up. A lot of the time people will forget that intangibility refresh degrades in this game, so they'll just keep trying to refresh intangibility, and eventually they have none. So threatening this move is a pretty good idea a lot of the time at ledge. I wouldn't recommend threatening this while your opponent is at ledge already, because it doesn't really cover too much and they'll just hit you with a get up attack anyway. But if you notice that your opponent is jumping off ledge a lot, of course you can position yourself into spacing a back air, spacing a nair, any of the really, really good aerials there are going to help you. So that's just a general, very, very quick look at ledge guarding and edge trapping with Garfield. I think, like I said, the biggest thing is just to be threatening constantly. If your opponent's off stage and they're always recovering low, go ahead and hold ledge. Threaten the S there. You know, they're not going to want to deal with that. If your opponent's recovering high, cover that space with pies. You know, negotiate your opponent into a position they don't want to be in. That way you can get a kill. And if your opponent has made their way to the ledge, neutral strong is a pretty good cover option, although it's going to be matchup dependent because certain characters' ledge get up attacks will beat you out on that. So that is something to keep in mind. But if they're simply doing ledge get up into like a shield, you know, you can do one of our other moves, you know, a shine grab or something like that. So there's not really specifics when it comes to Garfield's ledge guarding and edge guarding and ledge trapping outside of like S-Dare. It's more just reading, reacting to your opponent, and constantly being threatening towards them. So in this section, we're going to be talking about Garfield's disadvantage and recovery. And just a general note on disadvantage, it feels a bit strange in this game coming from some other platform fighters, and it can feel a bit non-interactive at times, and by that I mean it sometimes feels like you don't have much of a way to get out of disadvantage other than waiting for a tech opportunity or just waiting for your opponent to mess up. And if you're having that feeling, you know, don't worry, it's not just you. It is kind of a weird thing about disadvantage in this game that you just kind of have to get used to. So yeah, just want to make that quick general note about disadvantage before we start talking about Garfield's specific disadvantage tools. So some of the specific disadvantage tools that Garfield has at his disposal in order to get out of disadvantage are Shine and some of his aerials. Now obviously Shine, pretty good disadvantage move, comes out frame 2. If your opponent's getting a little bit too aggressive and they're not hitting frame perfect combos, you can just Shine, get them off you for a bit, and reset neutral, or take advantage of a bad move and go in for one of your Shine combos. You can Shine in the air as a get off me kind of tool, but it's not the greatest because it does leave you a little bit vulnerable. Yeah, it's much better as a grounded get off me tool. F tilt is also not a bad get off me tool. It has a little bit of range, it's relatively quick, and so if your opponent is comboing you on the ground and you have time to get out an F tilt, it does hit decently hard and can reset neutral at points to help you get out of some bad situations. As far as aerials go, Nair is a decent get out of disadvantage tool because it is quite big and it does cover a lot of Garfield's body, and it is relatively quick at that. So, you know, if you're getting comboed, you can throw out a Nair, and you can see it entirely covers Garfield's hurt boxes for the most part, except for maybe some tiny peaks, and it lasts relatively long as well, so it can punish some bad approaches and misspaced options. Dare can also do this if your opponent is juggling you with a non-disjointed move. You can sometimes dare out of it, although this is not nearly as good of a disadvantage tool as it was in NASB1, I will say that. And if your opponent is chasing you down too much, you can also get out of disadvantage at times with a back air. Of course, all of this is depending on your opponent not actually hitting true combos, so do keep that in mind. But yeah, so you have options in the air as far as your aerials go, but they are actually not our best disadvantage tool. Our best disadvantage tool is actually up special, and I'm going to tell you why. So you might be thinking, why is up special our best get out of disadvantage tool? Isn't that just burning our recovery in a desperate attempt to get out of disadvantage? Well, no, and there's a very specific reason for that, because we can jump out of it and do fun stuff like that. The fact that Garfield can jump out of his up special makes this easily his best get out of disadvantage tool. It allows us to go high, it allows us to go low, it allows us to mix up our opponents even in disadvantage. You know, it's a great move all around, as we've discussed for killing, and it's a great move all around because it allows you to do stuff like that, where you jump cancel and throw out a move to get your opponents off of you. It's also relatively quick. It starts pretty quick on frame 1, 2, 3, 4. By frame 4 you already have a hitbox. And you do have to fall for a bit before you can jump cancel it, but that's really not a huge deal. It just, yeah. If you need to get at disadvantage, don't be afraid to use your up B. Even if you're getting pushed towards the ledge, you can always jump out of it. Well, I use my double jump there. And even if you're getting pushed towards ledge, you can always jump out of it and air dodge back to ledge, air dodge back to stage. It's a really, really good option. So make good use of your up B in your disadvantage state. So speaking of up special, let's talk about recovery. And one of the things that you're going to want to do with your recovery as much as possible is, if you're going low, make sure you snap ledge, because you are vulnerable after you land on stage for a short period of time. It's not super long, but it is long enough for opponents with fast moves to take advantage of. So you're going to want to try to snap ledge as much as possible if you're forced to go low. And I will say that this can be frustrating at times because his recovery is a bit weird. You know, you just got to play around with the timing. It's a little forgiving, so it's not super precise, but there are going to be times where you're going to misspace it and land on stage. Just got to play around and get used to the timing. But speaking of timing, you can throw your opponent's timing off if you are forced to go low with something like a shine stall into a recovery option. So if your opponent is threatening these, spikes off stage and all this other stuff, don't be afraid to throw in a shine stall or two to throw off your opponent's timing before getting back to stage or going for ledge. It's a pretty good option just for mix-ups. You don't want to use it too often before your opponent catches on, but if you want to mix up timing a bit, you can do that. You can also mix up timing with your Sugar Rush, but I will warn you that this is going to make it fairly difficult for a little bit of time if you have a character that you're playing against that excels at juggling, because Sugar Rush turns you into a fast faller. However, it does stall you for a little bit before you just simply plummet into the air, as you can see. And I will build up a little bit of meter here just to show you. It does also make your up special go farther and faster. So it can be a niche use to get a disadvantage, but keep in mind that you might escape disadvantage with it, but it might make disadvantage for a little bit even more difficult to escape from, just due to the whole fast falling nature of the whole thing. So right now I'm going to show you a clip from somebody in the Garfield meta thread. This is from, I hope I'm going to say this name right, I believe it is Zhiva, S-H-I-V-A. They found a way to basically go flying with Garfield. It's quite interesting, as you can see here. So the way they describe it is it's shine up, out, up B while Sugar Rushed, and you kind of just go zooming. I would say that this is a niche recovery option, but it is one that you can make use of. Because you can recover apparently from like literally the depths of hell with this if you see this video. So shout out to them for finding this. And yeah, again, it costs some resources, but it's something that you might need to do in a desperate situation. So just something to keep in mind. This really weird momentum tech that they found, they asked me to call it the Taco Burrito Shine. So there you go. I guess we can call it that. Why? I'm not sure, but you know what? I'll roll with it. Overall, I would say Garf's disadvantage is pretty good, mostly because of the fact that up B can be jump canceled. If up B wasn't jump cancelable, I would say Garf's disadvantage is actually quite bad. But because of the fact that we can go wherever we want with up B and just jump cancel out of it, and even sometimes turn that around onto our opponents to put us in advantage, yeah. It's pretty solid. Just don't be afraid to mix up where you're going, go high, go low. Make sure you're not always doing the same thing, because his recovery can get predictable at times because it's always up and down, especially if you're out of jumps to jump cancel with. So mix it up, keep your opponent on your toes, but definitely bust out the jump cancel up B whenever you possibly can. And of course, if all else fails, don't forget, Garfield, you had burst. So this section of the guide is going to be titled the Garf Meta, and this is just a brief look into some stages and some of the character interactions that Garf has, just to kind of give you a feel for how he interacts with the meta of NASB2. So we're going to start on stages, and currently there are 9 legal stages in the game. Obviously, this is subject to change depending on when you're watching this video, but as of the making of this video, we have Urkan Armada Invasion, a tri-plat stage, Rooftop Rumble, a single plat stage with one big long platform, Harmonic Convergence, an uneven tri-plat stage, Royalwood Cemetery, a completely flat stage, Chimorton Joyride, a stage whose platforms all transform, Sweet Dreams, or Food Dreams as it's called in this game, has two platforms on the far sides, Miracle City Volcano has a long flat stage with three platforms on even footing, Technodrome has two platforms out to either side and a bit of a shorter stage, and Jellyfish Fields has one single moving platform. Now, the general consensus among Garf players that I've talked to and consulted has been that there is no one particular stage or type of stage that Garf excels at, but there's also no one particular stage or type of stage that Garf is very bad at. He's very, very flexible when it comes to his stage picks. Because we have both good aerials and good grounded options, we can really make use of whatever stage gets thrown our way. The big thing you're going to want to keep in mind when making your stage picks is really your opponent. You know, you're going to want to know the stages that your opponent wants to go to, and you try to avoid those stages if you possibly can. That's not to say there aren't advantages and disadvantages with some of these stage types that you're going to want to keep in mind. The general consensus that I've had among Garf players is that platforms are good for our game because we can use them for stuff like slide off aerials with your up special, and they can also give us a bit of room to extend our combos with our up B slime cancel maneuvers. However, personally, I also feel that too many platforms is a bit of a hindrance to our game. If you're going to a stage where there's a lot of platform focused combat, it can be difficult to hit some of our grounded options like our wave shines into down strong and things like that. If you want my personal opinion, I would avoid Urkan Armada Invasion because the platform focused combat limits our ability to do stuff like our wave shine into our kill options or just, building up damage with wave shines. And it's not to say that Garf doesn't have really good maneuvers to get off of platforms because, like I said, we have our up B slide offs and you can fall through platforms at a light dare, but we don't make as good of use of it as some of the other characters. That being said, a stage like Jellyfish Fields might be better because we still have access to a platform while not being the entire focus of the stage. Another stage I personally would like to avoid most of the time is Harmonic Convergence. The slants don't really play nice with a lot of our moves, especially us trying to do wave shine stuff. The slants can mess us up sometimes and just make it a little bit difficult. And plus, of course, there's also the platforms there that will be a little bit annoying to deal with. Similar situation with Miracle City Volcano. The platforms are just really big and they can kind of take up some of the combat at times that you just really don't want to be dealing with. My personal favorite stages to go to are Jellyfish Fields, Cemetery, and Sweet Dreams. But like I said, it's not necessarily an optimal play all the time to go to a certain stage because if your opponent has better maneuvers and their character really likes a certain stage, you might want to avoid that stage altogether. We're flexible and we should take advantage of that when it comes to our stage picks. So let's talk characters. Now, Garfield is considered currently, as of the recording of this video, a pretty good character in this game. Most people have them in their top 5. Some people have him in their top 3. Some people even have him as number 1. He's considered a very good character, but that's not to say there aren't certain characters that he struggles with. I'm not going to get into a matchup chart here in this video because it's still a bit early in the meta for us to be talking about matchup charts, and those things tend to change over time anyway as patches come out. So let's just talk about general character archetypes that he might struggle with. And I think the biggest one is characters with big active disjoints, the perfect culprit being Donatello. His bow staff being so long and having such good hitboxes and being so active really kind of makes it difficult for Garfield to get in. Our grounded movement isn't exactly the best, and even though our aerials are really good, he can punish a lot of our approaches just because his disjoints are so big, and he has a lot of really good anti-airs. Ember McLean is somewhat similar to a lesser degree because she overall is just not as good as a character, but she does have a lot of the same situations going on where she can kind of just wall us out with those big active hitboxes. So if you're playing against characters like that, it's definitely something you're going to want to keep in mind. You're going to have to pull a lot of tricks out of your bag to try to find a way in. Another character type that Garfield can struggle with at times is characters that have fast movement options that are combined with active hitboxes, the perfect culprit this time being Korra. just having the ability to zoom around the stage with active hitboxes that we don't really have the greatest disjoints with which to challenge makes these kind of matchups a little bit difficult. You know, if we had disjoints and things that we could knock core out of the air, it would be much easier. But because we have to commit to an option that a lot of the times isn't going to be disjointed enough to cover us completely from also getting hit, it can make those matchups a little bit difficult. Overall, though, when it comes to stages and characters, Garfield is pretty flexible on a lot of things. He doesn't really have bad stages. He doesn't really have unwinnable matchups. Just things that you might need to keep in mind when going for a stage pick and who your opponent is playing. Overall, he's a very flexible character. He's doing pretty well in the meta right now. So as long as you're taking best advantage of your tools, you should be okay.
Hey there, my name is Garfield Fan 6. I was the best Garfield player for much of Nick Brawl 1's lifespan, and am now in the process of trying to become the best Garfield in Nick Brawl 2. Rob asked me to record a section for this video providing any additional advice that I have for prospective Garfield mains, so here are my 3 biggest tips. First and foremost, spend some time familiarizing yourself with the game's movement engine. Garfield is an incredibly movement-heavy character, especially in neutral. As such, the very first thing you should do when picking up Garfield is ensure that you're making the most of all the movement options that Nick Brawl 2 has to offer. This includes options such as short hop fast fall aerials, reverse aerial rushes, dash dancing, wave dashing, ledge dashing, slime dashing, and shield dropping. I can tell you with 100% certainty that knowing how and when to use each of these options will improve your results with Garfield more than anything else. Also, these skills are all transferable to the entire cast, so even if you do end up deciding that Garfield isn't the character for you, I implore you to dedicate some effort into practicing your movement. My next piece of advice is a note on spacing. Since Garfield is a fairly stubby character with no real horizontal burst options, his approach to spacing in most matchups will generally be to stay just outside of his opponent's threat range. This is pretty standard playstyle for most bait and punish brushdown characters like Garfield, and it begins to make sense as to why when you understand the principles behind the bait and punish archetype as a whole. Put simply, bait and punish characters play neutral by trying to coax their opponent into performing a punishable option. Most of this time, these punishable options are offensive, like an attack or a grab, but they can also be defensive, like a roll or putting up their shield. Getting close to your opponent serves 2 main purposes for this playstyle. Firstly, the closer to your opponent that you are when you bait them, the less distance you'll have to travel to punish them. This allows you to get more reward off each opening by granting you the ability to use lower or shorter range options to start your punish. Secondly, there is much more pressure put on your opponent to choose an option when you're close to them, because they know if they do nothing they'll be hit. The closer you are to your opponent, the less time you give them to make a decision, which means that the odds of them panicking and making a wrong decision are increased. The range at which you need to space around your opponent to ensure that you yourself don't get punished varies between characters. So as you learn new matchups, always focus on learning your opponent's threat ranges in different situations, along with the associated windows in which they can be punished. Topic of matchups, we are brought to my last tip. Every character in this game varies in stats like weight, fall speed, and traction. As such, the approach that Garfield takes to playing Advantage Date will vary wildly from matchup to matchup. My advice for accounting for this is to just spend some time in the dojo practicing some of the combos and confirms from this video against different characters. Some combos that work on heavy characters with high fall speeds like Reptar and Grandma Gertie might not work on light and floaty characters like Nigel and Lucy, so it's best to figure out what works on who before you run into an unfamiliar matchup in the wild.
Thank you very much, Garfield Fan 6, aka Goforth. Just want to give a big shout out to her specifically because she's done a lot of great work and helped me with this guide. They've been my go-to person to just fact check a lot of stuff, make sure what I'm telling you guys is relevant and correct. And she's also just a cracked Garfield gamer. So thank you very much, Garfield Fan 6. And this ending part is going to be a mini montage comprising of some more hype Garfield clips, along with some more of the practical setups that you can also use more consistently in games, just to kind of end off and give a little showcase of what Garfield can do. So before we get into this, I just want to say thank you to everyone who watched. Thank you to everyone who's been supporting this kind of project. In the credits, there will be all the people that have helped me out finding different things in text and stuff. So be sure to stick around to the end credits so you can see the people who have helped me find a lot of the stuff in this guide, and also the credits for the people whose clips I will have been using and all that fun stuff. So yeah, it's just been a lot of fun to do this. I love making guides like this, and I hope that this guide can maybe help some people give the Lasagna cat a try. So without further ado, let's get into the montage.